So who is the audience for this class? It's gINT users to start with. So any gINT users who aspire to become power users and or gINT administrators, managers, and perform or administrate advanced automated processes with gINT. And then gINT power users, those who want to learn more about gINT rules or refresh knowledge or find out some more references on gINT rules. And then finally gINT administrators or gINT managers. So those who manage gINT at their companies and need to do it on their own or need to articulate what they need when engaging Bentley professional services. So we have cases and clients, users that basically have gINT administrators at their companies to administer or manage gINT across the company. And some of these gINT administrators are gINT power users at the same time. So basically they fulfill all the company's needs with regard to gINT customization on their own. And then we have gINT administrators who administer all gINT operations across the company, but when customization is required, they hire Bentley professional services or third parties that can customize for them. So what are gINT rules? So gINT rules are so-called application programming interface or API exposed in gINT. So this is very similar to MicroStation or Excel Visual Basic programming environment. So what you can do with gINT rules. So here are the items listed. Validation, very important in data processing, calculations as well, interpretation of data, data pre-population, security and interface alternation. And you can create your own commands, which is pretty exciting, as you will see. So what are the prerequisites? So first of all, basic understanding of gINT library and gINT project. gINT library and gINT project must match, must be paired, because anything that is library referencing specific to a certain gINT project or gINT template. And of course, the third prerequisite is desire to learn how to customize gINT, with gINT rules in this case. So let's just refresh our memory. So gINT library, or so-called GLB file, contains report templates, symbols, lookups, and other user-defined features. And most importantly, for this class, gINT rules are stored in the library. And then the other very important file is gINT project/template. So basically, it's a GPJ file, or which stands for gINT project, or GDT file, which stands for gINT database. So basically, these are pretty much the same file, with the exception that template is an empty file, empty database structure, and gINT project is a clone database template and then populated with the data. So GPJ is a database where subsurface data is stored. I want to draw your attention to references, where you can go and look up for any gINT rules information and even code and reuse it. So first of all, help file in gINT. If you go in gINT VDI help file and then type in gINT rules under search tab, as shown here, you will get like a lot of titles which are related to gINT rules. So you can go through them and explore and learn more. There's also like a plenty of code that you can copy and paste into a gINT API environment and use readily. The other reference that I highly encourage you to visit is big communities, geotechnical big communities. You will find a lot of very useful material related to gINT here and geotechnical software in general. And as you can see, there is a lot of free reports and examples for download that you can explore. Those are agency reports or general purpose reports, examples of different kinds, frequently asked questions and answers, geotechnical white papers and articles, things you can do in gINT, and of course gINT rule samples, plenty of them, very good samples that you can download, and it's readily available for use. And the third reference that I would like to draw your attention to is docs.bentley.com. It's a Bentley's public documentation archive, and under search product, type in gINT and hit go button as shown on the screen. And you'll get a long list of documentation related to gINT. These are basically like guides, user guides of different kinds for different functionality. And for this class, the most important one is user guide, gINT rules for gINT version v8i. And this gets us to our first gINT rule, hello world. So where do you start with gINT rules? As you can see on the slide, in the input mode, there is a gINT rules menu. When we expand the menu, we see several commands there, and the very first command is called gINT rules code. When you run that command, a gINT rules code dialog box will show. There are two tabs in this dialog box. One is called list and the other one is called code. In the list tab, we assign our modules names. We create new modules. Modules are empty containers that will contain procedures and code in it. We can also assign description to our module to understand better what kind of procedures are saved in that module. So once we named our module, we can switch to the code tab, and within the code tab we can create our procedures. In this very case, we have only one procedure called main, and then inside of these procedures we write our code. As we write our code, or after we are done with a procedure, we can debug, test, and verify code. In order to debug or run code in code window, we can use F8 function key. Once we tested it, we can save and close dialog box, and now we have a procedure ready to use in many places in gINT. First thing that we're gonna do is create our own custom command. In the input mode again, under gINT rules menu, there is add-ins manager command. If we run this command, add-ins manager dialog box will show. In the dialog box, yellow fields are mandatory. And yellow fields being mandatory is a standard practice in gINT application. So first we are going to enter a unique name and then command menu label, and then we can optionally enter a submenu name, in this case my commands, and then select application in which we will run rule, and you will see there are two options, and then we will select the module and procedure associated with this command menu label. After we are done, we can save and close add-ins manager, and then as you can see in the lower right hand corner of the slide, in the input mode, under add-ins menu, a new submenu will show my commands, and inside that submenu we will have a new command called hello world. If you run hello world command, in this case it is going to show us a message box with hello world text in it. Next location where we can use our procedures is system events. In input mode again, under gINT rules menu, at the very bottom there is a system events command. If you run these commands, a system event dialog box will show up. At this point of time we can see there are three events available: on library open, before running a command, and an open project for input event. For this example we will use an open project for input event, and we will select our module and procedure in it to run it. Once we close system event dialog box, we can go and open a new project. Once we open a new project, that's going to trigger an event, and this event will run the code hello world. Finally, we will demonstrate how to utilize the code in the table properties as shown. In the input mode, if you click on the table properties icon for the associated table, a table properties dialog box will show. In this very case, we are going to associate our code to the project Table Properties. In this dialog box we can see three tabs: General, gINT Rules, and Page Setup. So we click on gINT Rules and we will see additional events associated with the table. So procedure on empty dataset, procedure after updating grid, procedure on save, procedure after save, and procedure leaving tab. In this very example, we are going to use our code on procedure on save as shown. Once we click OK to close project table properties, and when we modify or enter new data in the table, click Save button, a Hello World dialog box will show. Let's demonstrate now how the code is written. First of all, I'm going to open a project, our standard project called gINT Standard US Lab. Then I'm going to open associated library. So under File, Change Library. I'm going to scroll down and select gINT Standard US Library, GLB, gINT Library. So under gINT Rules menu, there's a gINT Rules Code command. When I run it, I'm going to get gINT Rules Code dialog box. Here, in the List tab, I can write the name of my module. And description. Once I name the module, I can go to the Code tab and write a code. In the code window, we can start writing a code. So I'm going to write a very simple code that creates a message box and reads Hello World. First of all, I have to name my procedure. A mandatory procedure in gINT is called main, sub procedure main. And then I'm going to write a code here. Message box Hello World. I can keep adding different procedures here. And write additional code. In the procedure dialog box, we can select procedure that we want to work on. I'm going to remove the other procedure and keep it simple for this first time. On the code window, in the debug menu, I can run step into or hit F8 function key on my keyboard. This is going to get me an option to step into the code line by line and see its execution, perform testing, and see if it works properly. So F8, and if I hit one more time, it's going to show me Hello World text box. Click OK, proceed with F8, and complete it. So my code works, and I'm going to click Done to close this window and save the changes. So now I have a module, and I have one procedure in that module ready to use in different places in gINT. First of all, as mentioned before, we are going to create our first custom command. If I go to the gINT Rules menu, click on Add-ins Manager command, and this is going to open Add-ins Manager dialog box. Here I have to give a command's unique name, description optionally, command menu label. Optionally, I can enter submenu, so I'm going to enter my commands name for submenu. And under applications, I have two options. One that works in input mode and the other that works with the library data. In this case, I'm going to select input. And finally, I'm going to select a module and procedure inside of that module that will be associated with this command menu label and unique name. So Hello World, we have only one module and we have only one procedure in it for now. I'm going to select it and click OK. And then I can close Add-ins Manager to finish the exercise. Now I can go to the Add-ins menu and I can see my new submenu with the first command, Hello World. If I run it, it's going to show me Hello World message box. As mentioned before, we can use these procedures in different places in gINT. So next we are going to apply that under Events. Under gINT Rules menu, click on System Events command. It is going to give us System Event dialog box. Here we can see 3 events: on Library Open, Before command, and on Open Project for input. For this very example, again, we are going to select Hello World and main procedure in it. So that means when we open a project for input, a message box with Hello World will show up. Okay, let's open a project. And here it is, CodeWorks, Hello World. Before I continue, I will remove this code from the system event. Finally, I'm going to apply a gINT rule to a table property. So each table has its properties, and one of the table's properties is gINT rules. I'm going to apply gINT rule on a project table. So I go to Project Table, click on Table Properties. In the Project Table Properties, I can see 3 tabs, and I'm going to click on gINT Rules. Here, I can see 5 different events. gINT Rules procedure on empty data set, after updating grid, procedure on save, procedure after save, and procedure leaving tab. I'm going to apply my gINT rule on procedure on save. Again, I'm going to pick my Hello World module and then main procedure. Click OK, and then click again OK to close the Project Table Properties dialog box. And now I can add some data or change some data in the project table. And when I click Save button, Hello World dialog box will show. Before I continue, I'm going to remove this procedure from procedure on save event. So let's review what we've seen so far. gINT rules code is written in the gINT rules code window under different procedures. And different procedures can be saved in different modules. Once gINT rules code is written, it can be applied to different places. As we've seen, that can be gINT rules system events, and we've seen 3 different events: on Library Open, Before command, and on Open Project in input. On Library Open system event is most commonly used to check for user rights or to make sure a user is using the current company's library. Before command, for example, can be used to ensure that users has right to execute certain commands. And on Open Project in input is most commonly used to hide or show table groups, tables, and or fields based on the user and or the project type. Then we've also seen gINT rules table events that are related to tables. And here are the events available and for what we can use it. An empty data set event is used often to pre-populate sample records at standard depths and types. After updating grid is used to color cells based on your own criteria, like for example exceedances, and you can color them red to be so you can spot them immediately. On save event for different validation and calculation. On deletion can be used to prevent unauthorized users from deleting records. After save, to perform data manipulation on data from multiple tables. And then leaving tab event to hide or unhide table groups, tables, and or fields based on the values of a field or fields in the tab you are leaving. And finally, we've shown gINT rules as a custom commands or add-ins. So you may write your own commands under the add-ins menu. Import data in file formats that can be natively read by gINT. Generate reports filtered on stratigraphic units. Display information, pictures, hyperlinks in Google Earth. Automate common repetitive tasks. The gINT rules code demonstrated so far is too simplistic. The purpose of it was to show where gINT rules code is written and in which places in gINT can be reused. But there is a reasonable minimum code and good practices that we recommend when writing gINT rules. These good practices and minimal code is well outlined in a gINT rules for gINT version v8i guide. As mentioned before, this guide can be found on the docs.bentley.com website. Let's go to that site. As mentioned before, this is Bentley's public documentation archive. On the Find Documentation product, I'm going to type in gINT and hit Go button. This is going to give me a list of all documentation or guides related to gINT. If I scroll down, one of the documents is called gINT v8i User Guide, gINT Rules for gINT version v8i. You can download that document for free and explore it. I have this document downloaded on my computer. Let's open it and explore it. Notice that document is pretty comprehensive. It has 247 pages. I'm going to scroll down and point you to a title that is relevant to starting with gINT rules. It is called The Basic Process. If I click here, it's going to get me to the basic process description and how gINT rules code is written. Pretty much similar to what we've seen so far. If I go back to slides, we can see on the left hand side the basic process outlined. We can see few things that we consider good practices. For example, in the upper right hand corner you can see List tab and modules listed in it. One of the modules is called Common Procedure. It's considered a good practice to put all the procedures that are common to all other modules in module called Common Procedures, and the procedures saved in that module can be reused in other modules. In order to reuse procedures written in other modules, we need to use libinclude statement as circled in the lower right hand corner of the slide, and then provide a module name. In this very example, we have libinclude common procedures. It is also considered a good practice to list globally used variables in a common procedures module. Finally, our public submain should contain the code as shown on this slide, instead of just simplistic message box hello world. In any case, to save you a lot of typing, there are different approaches that you can use and reuse the code that already exists. One thing you can do is go to the guide gINT rules for gINT version v8i and simply copy and paste this code that we recommend as a minimal. Let us do that as an example. So let me switch to gINT application. Go to the gINT rules code, to list, and create a new model called Common Procedures. Then I'm going to switch to the user guide, go under Basic Processes, scroll down, and pretty much copy and paste recommended values. Go back, and the Common Procedure, I'm going to go to the code and paste. Then I can go back to the guide, copy another piece of code, go back to gINT and paste it. For example, this is a function that we recommend as a good practice to have in a Common Procedures module. Here I can spend some time to format it. So this is the one way of dealing with common procedures and reusing the existing code and following the good practices. There is the other way as well, which is even simpler, because gINT provides utilities to migrate code from one library to another. And here I'm going to utilize that option. So basically, instead of continuing with copying and pasting from the document, I'm going to close this window without saving the changes. So many programmers are lazy to write a code, especially if they know that that code exists already someplace. So gINT, as mentioned before, provides a utilities to merge or copy code from one library to another. And as I mentioned before, and we will demonstrate a little bit later, there is plenty of code already written and ready to be used in very easy manner. So let me demonstrate that to you. I'm going to switch back to gINT, and this time I'm going to go to the utilities. In the utilities, I want to make sure to click Leave Merge or Copy. So I'm going to browse to the library where I know where the code is saved. In this case, GT4LT1 library. Click Open. And in the library, I can see the items that I actually push from one library to another. In this very case, I'm interested in gINT rules. So if I click gINT rules modules, I push it here, click Execute, and this is going to give me a list of all modules that are available in some external library that I want to push into my current library. So I'm going to pick Common Procedures, and let's say my procedures 1. Click OK to execute, and merge copy is completed. Now if I go back to input mode and then gINT rules code, I can see common procedures pushed from the external library here as well as my procedure. If I click to common procedures and go to the code, I can see all commonly used field names or global variables listed for me already, as well as function that is very commonly used in different procedures. Go back to the list, click on my procedures 1, and then go to the code. Notice library include reference as well as a common procedure module referenced in this module. That means that we can use functions and variables defined in the common procedures module in this very module. Also notice public submain. It is a little bit more complex than we wrote it before, but this is its standard shape and form. So basically in the future you can just copy and paste this one and reuse it in many different places. Although if you have one standard library, you should have only one submain. Finally, my code got pushed in a procedure called Hello World with this message box, and then now everything works as before, only it has a minimal reasonable code, and the code follows good practices that we recommend. Click Save and Close, and that completes the process of migrating code from one library to another. Finally, let's go back to the slides and demonstrate an example from bCommunities. So as mentioned before, there is plenty of examples on bCommunities. So if we go to the bentley.com/gINT site, this is our website with information about gINT application. And on the left hand side there is a communities link. If I click on it, it's going to bring me to a geotechnical bCommunities. Here you can visit for commonly asked questions and answers, communicate with other users, or communicate with our technical support. I'm going to click on a Wiki tab. Here you will find a lot of free references related to gINT, like for example free reports and examples, geotechnical white papers and articles, how-tos, and things you can do in gINT. One of the things you can find here is gINT rule samples. If I click on this link, it's going to get me to the page with the gINT rule samples. These gINT rule samples are free to download and explore on your own. as well as modify, that should be a good starting point for you to start generating your own code in GINT with GINT rules. If I scroll down, you'll see that there is a really long list of GINT rules readily available for download and reuse. Here I'm going to just download one of the GINT rules and demonstrate how it's supposed to work. I would also highly recommend to explore on your own GRA005 GINT rule. It's an add-in GINT rule, and if you're interested, you can also get a link to the recording, a comprehensive recording of how this GINT rules is used. For this example, I'm going to download GR0018, which colors cells, rows, and columns in the input grid based on user-defined criteria. You can click on a full description to explore in details what GINT rules is supposed to do. In any case, for bedrock depth, all rows at this depth or greater are colored red for this very example. So if I go back, and I already downloaded this rule, so let me go to the folder with the zip file. If I extract 0018 into a separate folder, I can see files that are in it. So first of all, you're going to always find a GINT library and paired or matched GINT project file, as well as a text file with additional instructions of what to do. But in essence, all you have to do is to open GINT project and GINT library in GINT application to explore and run GINT rules. So in this very case, I'm going to go to Open Projects and browse to GR18. And then I'm going to open Matched or Paired Library under File, Changed Library. Click OK. You can see in this very project there is only 3 tabs: Project Point and Colors, and other GINT rules. If I go to the GINT rules code dialog box, I can see common procedures as in many other GINT rules, and then GR0018 module that illustrates the process of coloring cells in the grid. And if I go to the code window, I can explore code on my own. I'm going to close that, go to the Colors tab, and you can see that some of the rows and fields, some of the tables are colored by GINT rules. Let's say if I enter here 41, hit Save button, that's going to color this field in red as defined by GINT rule. So it's a very simple way to reutilize existing functionality on our website with the GINT rules. I encourage you to explore that on your own if you're interested in advancing with GINT rules programming. So don't forget to visit our geotechnical B communities for additional GINT rule samples. Also, please visit us at www.bentley.com/GINT for more information about GINT. That would conclude Using GINT Rules class. Thank you very much for your attention.